Back on October 5th, 2022, it was officially announced that voice actor Hellena Taylor, who played the role of Bayonetta since pretty much the very beginning, would not be reprising the role for Bayonetta 3. Instead, Jennifer Hale would be taking over as a new voice of Bayonetta. Jennifer Hale, for those who don't know, is a very respected voice actor in the industry. She's played characters like Naomi Hunter in the Metal Gear series. She played Female Shepard in Mass Effect. And recently she played Rivet in Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, among many other well-known characters. And given her level of prominence, and given that people generally love her work, there are folks who are very much looking forward to seeing her take on the character. But on the other hand, people were wondering, what's the reason behind Hellena not returning? Was it scheduling conflicts? Is there a narrative reason behind why the voice actor switcheroo is happening? There are all these theories, but back on October 5th, game director Yusuke Miyata kept it pretty vague by saying various overlapping circumstances made it difficult for Hellena Taylor to reprise her role. Overlapping circumstances seem to imply like a scheduling conflict of sorts. We held auditions to cast the new voice of Bayonetta and offer the role to Jennifer Hale, whom we felt was a good match for the character. I understand the concerns some fans have about the voice change at this point in the series, but Jennifer's performance was way beyond what we could have imagined. I'm confident that her portrayal of Bayonetta will exceed our fans' expectations. While there were certainly plenty of people who've expressed that they would have loved to see Hellena reprise the role, given the way the circumstances behind her dismissal was expressed, seemingly overlapping circumstances outside of their control, people were ultimately willing to, give Jennifer Hale a chance to bring this character to life. And, recasting of characters happens, and the best we can hope for is that the new actor can do the best work that they can do to bring the character to life in a way that is true to who this character is. Generally, people were willing to look past the recasting of this iconic role, but recently, earlier today in fact, Hellena Taylor took to Twitter to share what happened in her perspective behind the scenes. She shared 3 videos in which she explained that the reason behind why she's not returning is because she refused the role due to the fact that she felt like she wasn't being compensated fairly. I'd like to go ahead and play these clips for you guys so that you can hear from Hellena directly, and then I'll chime in with my own thoughts and comments. But before then, let's check these clips out.
Hello, my name's Hellena Taylor, and I am the voice of Bayonetta, and I would like to explain to you why I didn't voice Bayonetta 3. Bayonetta franchise made an approximated $450 million. That's not including merchandise. As an actor, I trained for a total of 7.5 years. And what did they think this was worth? What did they offer to pay me? The final offer to do the whole game as a buyout, a flat rate, was $4,000 US. This is an insult to me, the amount of time that I took to work on my talent and everything that I have given to this game and to the fans. I am asking the fans to boycott this game and instead spend the money that you would have spent on this game donating it to charity. I didn't want the world. I didn't ask for too much. I was just asking for a decent, dignified living wage. What they did was legal, but it was immoral.
What they did was legal, but immoral. Man, talk about a quote that encompasses so many unfortunate circumstances across so many different industries. But yeah, she describes the situation fairly simply. She was offered $4,000 to play Bayonetta for the entirety of Bayonetta 3, a flat fee of $4,000, not by session, not by hours, it was just $4,000 flat. And she felt that that level of pay for that amount of work was just not worth her talent. It was not worth the fact that she gave so much to this character. I think she put it aptly when she said, I'm not asking for the world. She's not asking for beaucoup Hollywood bucks. She's just asking for a dignified living wage. Just something reasonable, especially when you consider the fact that the reason Bayonetta has become such an iconic character is because of the performance that Hellena provided that set the foundation for who this character is, her personality, her way of being, her essence. And without that, I don't think Bayonetta as a franchise would have the appeal that it does. What she gave to the character very much helped sell the game. And so, given that she's played this character for 2 games now, the least they could do for her third outing would be to negotiate a higher wage. Again, nothing out of this world, just something reasonable and that can offer a decent living wage, which is something that many voice actors unfortunately struggle with, because generally across many sectors of the voiceover industry, voice actors are severely underpaid. And as someone who's now been doing voice acting for 3 years now professionally, I can confirm that this is true. There are certain sectors and studios that do pay better than others and pay more fairly, but generally, there's a lot of unfair treatment against voice actors. There are a lot of companies who are trying to get away with cheapening out when it comes to paying voice actors as much as possible. It's been a prominent issue for a while now and continues to be a prominent issue. And $4,000 to reprise an iconic role for a franchise that has made hundreds of millions, yeah, I can see why she might be insulted. I'd like to move on to part 2 of Helena's video message. Here we go.
Now, those of you who follow me on Twitter know that I'm more of a lover than a fighter, and sometimes think I'm not very much like Bayonetta at all, but I guess I am a little bit more like Bayonetta than I thought. I understand that boycotting this game is a personal choice, and there are those that won't, and that's fine. But if you're someone who cares about people, who cares about the world around you, who cares about who gets hurt with these financial decisions, then I urge you to boycott this game. I decided to do it to stand up in solidarity with people all over the world who do not get paid properly for their talents. Fat cats cream off the top and leave us the rotten crumbs. You know, in England right now, there are nurses going to food banks to feed their children. This is not right. This is not acceptable. It impacts mental health. Because of it, I suffered from depression and anxiety. I worried that I was going to be on the streets. That terrified me so much that once I was suicidal. I am not afraid of the non-disclosure agreement. I can't even afford to run a car. What are they going to do? Take my clothes? Good luck to them. Bayonetta always stands up for those with less power and stands up for what is right. And in doing this, you stand with her.
So Helena's going all out with this message. She's holding nothing back. She's breaking NDA and calling for a boycott. And, you know, it's just a level of disillusionment that leads someone to believe the only way they can change something is to disrupt. Because, you know, when they've tried to do everything else, to do it through the proper channels, and when nothing comes of it, it's like, what else can one do except to, you know, disrupt in a way that finally forces companies and entities who can control these kinds of things to pay attention. Now, she does bring up, like, nurses in England and all these things. I do believe that nurses have the more important and more difficult job, just to get that out of the way. But it doesn't change the fact that the point that she's trying to make is that providing fair wages should just be the status quo. It shouldn't be something that we have to just claw for when a living wage is what we depend on to, well, live. I don't know if this message will have enough of an impact that it will tangibly affect Bayonetta 3's sales and actually send a message, but that's ultimately what she's trying to do here, send some kind of message in the hopes that companies learn or see that this is something they can't always get away with, and that it'll eventually come back to bite them in the butt. Before discussing further, here is part 3 of Hellena Taylor's message.
For those of you who are interested, I'd like to go into a little more detail about the back and forth. The first thing was I was required to audition again, because sometimes voices change with time. So I auditioned for the role and obviously passed with flying colours. They then sent me an insulting offer. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to write to Hideki Kamiya. I'm going to write to him and ask him for what I'm worth. So I got a friend who has been in business in Japan, to write in Japanese to him. I know he read it because I got a reply. I got a reply saying that he values greatly my contribution to the game and that the fans really want me to voice it over. And the memory of first meeting me as Bayonetta is a memory I hold dear. So I thought, great, thank God. That was when they offered me $4,000. Do you know, Platinum had the cheek to say that I was busy, that they couldn't make it work with Miss Taylor's schedule. Well, I had nothing but time. They now have a new girl voicing her over. And I love actors. I wish her all the joy in the world. I wish her all the jobs, but she has no right to say she is the voice of Bayonetta. I created that voice. She has no right to sign merchandise as Bayonetta, any more than I have the right to sign as Eva Green, even though I was her parrot on the video game The Golden Compass. That portrayal is hers and hers alone. They'll probably try and do a spin-off with Jan. Don't buy that either.
So there are two people that Hellena Taylor calls out in part 3 of her video message. Hideki Kamiya, who is a founder of Platinum Games, one of the executives at Platinum Games, and Bayonetta series creator. And apparently it was Hideki Kamiya who made the offer of $4,000 for the entire game, after she got an even more insulting offer from what she's relaying. And then there is Jennifer Hale, who wasn't called out by name, but it's very clear who she was referring to, essentially saying that Jennifer Hale announcing that she's the voice of Bayonetta in Bayonetta 3 was a betrayal because Hellena feels like she created this character. She is Bayonetta, and Jennifer Hale claiming ownership over this character, that shouldn't be a thing when Hellena had no choice in the matter in terms of the unfair circumstances surrounding why she decided to refuse the role. It's worth keeping in mind, however, that Jennifer Hale has recently been liking tweets implying that even if she wanted to say something or make a statement, she can't because she's under NDA, that Jennifer Hale might have known nothing about Hellena Taylor's situation before she auditioned for and took on the role, that Platinum Games may not have informed her about any of this before asking her to audition, and that we may not necessarily know the full story. In fact, one of the tweets she liked makes it pretty clear that she was hired for a role without context of the situation. So yeah, Hellena might have jumped the gun by calling out Jennifer Hale in a way that might lead her to getting harassed. Frustration should be directed at the companies and decision makers involved. And let me tell you, it's not uncommon for voice actors to be kept in the dark about pertinent information. Now look, in the entertainment business, technically nobody owns a role in a literal sense, but certainly people deeply associate a character with the actor who brought that character to life, the actor who established the foundation that, all future performances will be based on. And for Bayonetta, that was Hellena Taylor. In that sense, one could certainly say that Hellena Taylor is Bayonetta, much like one would say that David Hayter is Solid Snake and Naked Snake and Big Boss. And it'd be one thing if the role was passed down in good faith in a way that all parties agreed, but it's another thing for an actor whose performance created the essence of the character to feel betrayed because they weren't given a fair deal. And so that role was given to somebody else who were either willing to deal with the circumstances or were made a better offer because they're a more prominent name. While technically and legally speaking, companies can do whatever they want with their IPs and their characters and cast and recast whenever they please. From an artistic and sentimental standpoint, people do make strong associations between characters and actors. And if it feels like an actor was betrayed out of their role, then yeah, people will usually be in support of that actor, much like how when David Hayter was unceremoniously recast. While, CIPHER did a fine job of bringing his version of the character to life, much like how I'm sure Jennifer Hale will do a fine job of bringing her take to the character, there's still that dark cloud hanging over these characters now because they could have returned as their characters, but couldn't, not because they weren't willing to, but because of reasons that don't feel entirely justified in terms of why the recasting had to happen, or because in Hellena's case, she felt like the offer that she was made in terms of the money that she'd be given for the work was undignified, fans in some way are going to perceive that as a betrayal because the recasting didn't need to happen. There was a way to bring back the actors who brought these characters to life that had such a positive impact on the lives of the fans who are supporting the products, and then to learn that the reason these actors didn't come back was for reasons that were unfair and outside of their control. Yeah, that's going to generate a whole lot of backlash, and the backlash has certainly been intense and severe. Hellena has seen overwhelming support from fans, from the voiceover community, from gaming enthusiasts, with her tweet here or her video message garnering almost 170,000 likes. And I mean, look at the kind of viewership we're looking at with this video. 5.5 million views, and it's not been a day. It's not been 24 hours since the video's release. This message has spread far and wide enough that Bayonetta and Platinum Games have both been trending all day. And this has made headlines across all kinds of major news outlets, and it feels like all people are talking about today in the gaming landscape is this situation. Now, we haven't gotten an official response from Platinum Games, but Hideki Kamiya did take to Twitter to express the following. He seems to imply that not everything Helena's saying is true. Basically tweeted, sad and deplorable about the attitude of untruth, but his lack of elaboration doesn't help lend him credence. He says right here, that's all I can say right now. And then, by the way, beware of my rules. So that right there is in bad faith. For those who don't know, Hideki Kamiya has this thing where he has rules where if you don't follow, you'll get immediately blocked. And it's become this whole meme where he just blocks everyone. And it was like funny at first, but then amidst this situation, him insisting on blocking people instead of just being communicative and having a proper discourse about the situation, that's generating a whole lot of bad faith surrounding Bayonetta 3 and Hideki Kamiya, who's normally sort of like a beloved developer, maybe a little controversial with how he blocks people all the time. But again, that's become more of like a funny meme now. But that is no longer funny when we're dealing with a serious situation, something that affects the livelihood of a working actor, and when it affects fans' perception surrounding the recasting of a beloved character. Now, I don't know exactly what Hideki Kamiya means by attitude of untruth. Maybe there's more to this story than meets the eye, and maybe we'll hear on a more official capacity from Platinum Games and Hideki Kamiya. But right now, it's definitely Platinum Games and Kamiya who are looking bad. Hellena has been, pretty communicative about her side of the story. Platinum Games and Hideki Kamiya keeping quiet and keeping things vague still when this conversation is raging on. It's just not helping them. I guess we'll see what sort of untruths he's talking about in the not-so-distant future. I'll be sure to keep you guys updated. With the information that we have right now, though, voice actors in particular have been coming out in support of Hellena Taylor. David Hayter himself said, ridiculous, fight on, Hellena, retweeting her message and expressing solidarity. David Hayter in particular is someone who is very familiar with what it's like to play an iconic characters for many years only to have that character be recast. David Hayter wasn't even informed. There was no ceremony. It was a very disrespectful way to dismiss an actor whose performance was such a big part of why Metal Gear Solid was successful in the West. He was a big part of why Solid Snake became such an iconic character and why so many people fell in love with this series of games. David Hayter contributed so much to the series and, was so beloved among fans, and to learn that he was dismissed in such a way was, hurtful, and it sucked because, again, we have such a sentimental and strong attachment to the actor and how they brought the character that we love to life. Hellena Taylor was offered the job, but the offer that was made in terms of wage was so insulting and undignified that Hellena, as much as I'm sure she loves the character, could not justify coming back and working with a company who doesn't respect her talents and what her skills and what she brought to the character is worth. Voice actor Brian Deckard also came out in support by responding to Hideki Kamiya with the following message: those who treat others well are treated well in return. You make us all sad. Greed is ugly. But he also took it a step further to explain what could have potentially happened behind the scenes by saying, for those curious, yes, this has happened to me. I booked the lead character of a AAA game by a studio that has made many games. They refused to register the project with SAG-AFTRA or to make it union and offered to pay $4,000 for the entire game. I passed, but someone else did it, and no ground was gained. So apparently this isn't an uncommon practice. Brian Deckard faced pretty much the exact same situation that Hellena did. Hell, even the offer, $4,000 for the entire game, was the same. I have to wonder whether this is a Nintendo-related property or another Platinum Games-related property. Brian Deckard then laid out some of the possible scenarios that could have transpired here. For those asking, in order for Hellena Taylor to have been recast, the new actor is either non-union, FICOR, and willing to work at this terrible rate, hurting all of us, which we can debunk because Jennifer Hale is a union actor and has worked on many union projects, or is union and breaking rules doing non-union, or is union having convinced the project to go union, which he says is unlikely. Now, there are plenty of actors these days who do both union and non-union work because that's just the only way to make a living wage because, again, voice actors don't get paid anywhere as much as people think. Now, whether Bayonetta 3 is a union project, I couldn't tell you, but if it is, it'd be very unusual to offer that flat rate of $4,000 to voice the entire game because if a project is union, there are certain rules that need to be followed. This isn't some big secret, by the way. If you go to the official SAG-AFTRA website, you can find a section where they tell you the essentially guidelines for the current established rates for the various categories like interactive, which is video games. And if you go to this section right here, rate sheet and digest, there's a PDF that tells you what the rules of engagement are when it comes to union video games. And you can see here on this PDF that there is no section detailing a $4,000 payout for voicing a character for an entire video game. As someone who has worked on some union projects, this right here is a rate that I've seen fairly frequently where you essentially get paid almost $1,000 for up to 3 voices and up to a 4-hour day. These are the minimum protections, the minimum requirements. You can, of course, if you reach a certain level of prominence as an actor or are playing a major enough role, there's certainly room for negotiation to negotiate for higher wages and all of these different things. Some studios may by default just offer more, or they may offer more if it's like a performance capture thing instead of just vocal. And if it's a vocally straining session where there's a lot of screaming and whatnot, you have to limit the session to 2 hours. And there are all these different stipulations and rules that if a project is union has to follow, which is why it is assumed that Bayonetta 3 is likely non-union because it is not following the SAG-AFTRA guidelines when it comes to the rates you have to offer. So the question is, were these circumstances kept the same for the new actor who chose to take on the role and accept the rate of, $4,000 to play the character for the entire game? Or were circumstances shifted now that they got sort of a more prominent name to play the character? It's hard to say for sure, and given the nature of confidentiality, I don't imagine that those involved in the project will speak out about this because otherwise they could be liable. And as someone looking at the situation from the sidelines, I don't know if there is some kind of untruth behind what Hellena is saying or if there's more than meets the eye when it comes to this situation that hasn't been fully elaborated on yet that could change the context. But so far, what Hellena claims is she was offered $4,000 to play the protagonist, an iconic protagonist at that, for a video game that is the third major entry of a series that's been gaining more and more popularity. If that is the whole truth, then yeah, I cannot find the situation to be in any way, shape, or form acceptable. But at the same time, I do want to see how this whole story develops in case there is more to this than meets the eye, in case there's information and context that we currently don't know that may change our perspective of all of this. But for right now, I will say the fact that so many voice actors aren't surprised at such a situation that for many outside the voiceover industry is shocking goes to show that the floor of fair treatment and compensation for actors is so low, so unreasonably low, and hopefully it's something that can be raised significantly over time as voice actors continue to speak out against those companies and those entities who would engage in unfair and just stingy treatment. It's why we're seeing voice actors like Daniel McRae saying voice actors deserve better. Austin Lee Matthews here, this Saying It Chief, says, responding to Hideki Kamiya, voice actor Elias Tufexes is sort of in wait-and-see mode, saying that my initial reaction is disgust at what was offered, but there seems to be more to the story, so I'm holding off for now. Hopefully Hideki Kamiya and or Platinum Games will provide an explanation sooner rather than later, if they have one, because so far things are not looking good at all for either of them. And voice actors, the reason they believe Hellena so much is because they have first-hand experience with this kind of treatment. And Hideki Kamiya should certainly stop blocking people. Again, it was funny when it was more of a meme, but this is a serious situation, and the fact that he's now blocking people that are questioning why Platinum Games decided to disrespect the value and of Hellena Taylor's voice actor work as Bayonetta, that's only making it harder for people to give Hideki Kamiya the benefit of the doubt about how there might be untruths or that there might be more context behind the situation. And to close things off, there are two voice actors who kind of took to Twitter to talk about voiceover wages. Jonah Scott here tweeted, "This stuff isn't a secret, by the way. You can Google our wages. Looks like a lot on paper, but what if you only got 1 gig a month?" That's the thing. People look at non-union rates like $75 to $80 an hour and figure, man, that's a lot of money. But keep in mind that we're constantly applying for new jobs. We're constantly auditioning. We don't have this stable job. As soon as 1 gig's up, we are reapplying for another job. We are auditioning for a new gig in the hopes that we can continue to find consistent work across various, shows, video games, anime, whatever it might be that we can voice for. Some people also make the mistake of looking at these hourly rates like it's a 9-to-5 job, except it's not that, and the voiceover realm sessions last like an hour, 2 hours, up to 4 hours, and these sessions don't happen every day, Monday through Friday, unless you're booking consistently. If you get cast in a bunch of shows where you're playing a prominent long-term character, then maybe you can have a session like every day, but that's never a guarantee. People have moments where they seem to be working a lot, but then that's followed up by a dry period. You never know. And then when it comes to union rates, $1,000 for, a session's worth of work, that sounds like a good chunk of money, but that kind of money only comes in consistently if you land a role that's major enough that you're going to be working on this project for a while, for many hours. Those roles are few and far between. If you're voicing some of the minor characters that only have a few lines, you might just see the one session and then have to reapply for a new job, essentially, by auditioning in the hopes that you can find more work, because once that session's up, your tenure with that project is over, and there's only so long that money infusion can last. So if you're not working consistently, then it can definitely be a struggle. Similarly, $4,000 may seem like a lot to some folks, but we're talking about an entire project's worth of work. This is a protagonist character who's gonna have a decent amount of lines, and $4,000 can only last you so long, and you don't book a project like the protagonist of a video game very often at all. So when that does happen, given how much, a character matters to people and how much a character helps sell copies of video games and helps draw in viewers and interest and all these things, and especially when this is the third outing of this iconic character, you could stand to pay more than a $4,000 flat rate. Now, some people might say, well, just book more gigs, but easier said than done, because so much of auditioning is, in terms of the actor's interpretation, that's objective. In terms of what the casting director is looking for, that's objective. So it's not even that, you were less talented than the other actors. Just, you kind of have to roll the dice on what you think the casting director might want, give your best performance possible, and hope that that's kind of what the casting director is looking for. It's not about, at a certain level, it's not who's more talented than the other. It's, who's got specifically the right thing that you need for this specific version of the character that production is looking for. It's not easy to consistently land gigs, but if the VO industry as a whole generally treated actors more fairly and just paid them with compensation that is more in line with, livable wage, actors would have an easier time during the downtimes between the gigs that they get, because even the best actors have their moments of famine amidst those moments of feast. Which is why Jonah brings up that these wages look a lot on paper, but what if you only book 1 gig a month? That's rent. Cool. Then you have to worry about food, gas to get to the studio, childcare, car loans. There's a reason I stream 12 to 16 hours a week, why actors supplement their voiceover work with so much other stuff like content creation or going to conventions and do signings, because for a lot of actors, that's where they make their living wage, not with the craft itself, because that's the part that pays the lowest, but rather with the support that the fans provide for them during these conventions. And even with conventions, to do financially well there, you must have landed a prominent enough role that people will show up at these conventions to meet you and to buy signed prints from you and whatnot. For my part, I'm in the fortunate position of having established myself as a content creator and being in a good position right now financially because of your support, because you come in, watch my videos and all these things, and that's allowed me to comfortably sort of make a living while being able to pursue my passion project of voice acting. But if I were just coasting off of voice acting, I'd be financially unstable. I just wouldn't be able to make a living here in LA. And so I'm in that very much lucky position that I worked very hard for, but it's not a luxury that other voice actors have, because other voice actors just want to focus on voice acting because it's the thing that they're really passionate about. But when the industry treats them unfairly, when they're paid unfairly, you know, with gigs that could pay more given the multi-million, you know, multi-billion-dollar franchises or companies that are involved, and when they're paid scraps compared to, you know, the budget, and when these companies can afford to pay much more, it's just incredibly demoralizing, and it's certainly not fair. Not unreasonably more. Again, actors aren't asking for the world, they're just asking for what's reasonable. Here's one more anecdote from voice actor Sean Chiplock, who played Revali in Zelda Breath of the Wild. He publicly tweeted, "I was paid approximately $2,000 to $3,000 overall because, you know, for Revali, because it was based on the total number of hours in the studio, which was higher because of voicing 3 characters in a single game. I made more from voicing Spade/Dale in Freedom Planet 1 because that generously gave me sales royalties." It kind of gives you an idea for the kinds of wages that voice actors tend to see, even if they're voicing major characters for major franchises. We just don't get paid when it comes to voiceover work on the level that people think we do. But yeah, only time will tell how this whole situation plays out, if Platinum and Hideki Kamiya will respond with something that hopefully sheds more light on this situation. But, you know, voice actors have enough experience with this kind of BS that, yeah, you're seeing plenty of folks in the industry speak out in solidarity and support, plenty of folks sharing their own experiences. This is not shocking for anyone who's done voice acting for a while. It's kind of it's another Tuesday kind of situation. Hopefully, the fact that this story has gained traction will at the very least create the motivation to begin some kind of discussion so we can meet somewhere in the middle, you know, and just better an industry that could be bettered in a lot of ways, you know, in terms of how actors are treated and how actors are compensated. At the end of the day, you know, as much fun as we voice actors have playing these characters, the fact of the matter is that people still need to make a living. It's still work, and the world, unfortunately, revolves around money, not just goodwill. Money is necessary to survive. And while I'm in a position where, you know, I don't have to worry financially, plenty of actors, you know, are coasting by just through voice acting, and that floor of standards could stand to be raised by a significant margin. Or at the very least, that's my opinion, and maybe that opinion will continue to develop as we get maybe more clarity on the story. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, though, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole Hellena Taylor situation, her message to Bayonetta fans, and just generally her message to the public about her situation and what she feels like is just entirely unfair treatment based on what she has said and relayed via her messages. Share your thoughts below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.